Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky. And we are back with G.I. Joe, Joe on Joe Illustrated, where we are once again going through every issue of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, published by Marvel Comics, issue by issue, page by page, and dare I say, panel by panel, with complex breakdowns by yours truly, whom you can find on the internet at Joe on Joe Pod. That's on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Send me an email to joeonjoepod@gmail.com. Let me know what you think of the show. And really importantly, if you're listening on a podcast player, please rate and review me. We should be available on most podcatchers and all that stuff. It's funny, I hadn't really kind of checked my availability settings for a while, and my podcast host has, since last time I checked it, added like 3 or 4 new ones. So there's some new places we're out there. So if you're a new listener to Joe on Joe, welcome aboard. If you're an old listener, thanks for staying aboard. If you're a Patreon listener, where you can go to patreon.com/Joe on Joe Pod, thanks for supporting the show. There's $1 tiers, $3 tiers, and sponsorship tiers at $20, where you too can help keep the doors open here. And as we go on our now 5-year journey, take that, Star Trek, through the world of G.I. Joe, through the lens of Joe. Now, before we get started, let's hear from one of our sponsors, the fabulous Movies and a Meal podcast. Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts. And you also love movies. So why not do a podcast that's about not one movie, it's about not 2 movies, it's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben, and each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Pensarga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show. Ain't they great? Now, this week, the episode we're talking about is G.I. Joe number 79. It is it's a really good kind of one and done standalone. It sort of exists outside of continuity, which I'm all for it. It's a lot of fun. For any dog lovers out there, there's a lot of dog action, and I certainly am one of them. It's got a great cover. It's Buzzer attacking Junkyard with a chainsaw, which is fabulous, which ties into this week. I discovered that Netflix has Ash versus the Evil Dead on it. I'd never seen that show when it was on Stars, and I binged it this week on Netflix. Guys, if you're an Evil Dead fan like I am, but you just never subscribed to Stars like I never did, this is your chance. I loved it. Bruce Campbell is king. Who would Bruce Campbell be in the Joe universe? I feel like Bruce Campbell, it's a no-brainer. Were we casting today, all things being equal, he would have to be Sergeant Slaughter, right? Now, I know obviously Sarge is a real dude, so if we couldn't get Sergeant Slaughter, and Bruce Campbell and his chin would step in nicely. Now, if we did get a younger, more like a Sergeant Slaughter to play that role, Bruce Campbell would make a fabulous Flint in the G.I. Joe universe. I think so. And I'm thinking of that because Buzzer has this giant chainsaw on the front of the cover, of course. The other thing I want to talk about this week. Now, for 5 years, I've said to my guests, before we come on, I said, hey, try to watch the swearing keep this PG-13. This is a family-friendly show. So I'm going to say this: if you have any kids in the air, kids in the car, kids in the audio shop, maybe cover the ears for a second. I'm not going to get too graphic, but I am going to throw something out there. I did some searching this week. I was on Amazon, and I was looking for books. My search terms were G.I. Joe books. Those exactly were my search terms. And I got the usual. I got the IDW trades and and the wonderful character, like toy collectible books, that outline the value books, collector's guide to G.I. Joe, all that stuff that we normally see. Because what happened this week, I bought the prequel novels to the movies. The one was the adaptation of the movie, both by Max Allan Collins, who I'm a big fan of. He wrote some great Batman stuff right around pre-year one stuff, post-crisis Batman. We've talked about it on the show. It's great stuff. He also does a ton of Dick Tracy stuff out there for our friend of the show, Dave Amiot, who, Dr. Mindbender from Cold Slither. He's a big Max Allan Collins guy. And so he wrote the G.I. Joe novelization of Rise of Cobra. And then I guess the other book, I haven't read either of them yet. The other one is apparently a prequel to Retaliation. So I got those this week. So it got me thinking, like, well, is there anything else out there? Like, is there any other, Joe novels that I've missed? I have a lot of the stuff from the 80s, the Choose Your Own Adventures, plus I think there were 6 or 8 of the novelization ones, which I love. I love those. I read those when I was in my 30s. I found them. But I found, and this is where you want to check your children. It's a parody book. So apparently but there is a G.I. Joe fan erotica book called G.I. Ho, everybody. And so here's the deal. I'm not going to get into the details, but it's written by Riley Rose, obviously a pen name. Riley, if you're in the audience of Joe on Joe Pod, I want you to reach out to me and let me know, because I want to talk to you. I think it's a lot of fun. I shared this with Toilet Teal, and we were both chuckling, and she goes, "Hey, I'm not here to kink shame, and I get it. I'm not either. But it's been fascinating me. So that is a thing. And when I say book, like, I get it. The Rule 34 of the internet /fiction exists. This is a printable. This is a book. And this is new to me, so I think this is a whole new step for this whole endeavor that we're all on. So listen, guys, Riley Rose, I'm sure that's your pen name. If you're out there and you're listening, or someone here knows who it is, have them get in touch with me, and we can do something a lot of fun with this show. Probably do it behind the Patreon paywall, because again, I like to keep our feed relatively clean. So let me know. I think that's a lot of fun. Strangely enough, I have another Are You Out There in the audience. I did get another G.I. Joe book off the old interweb searches, and it was like an encyclopedia that they had published it was around the time of the movies. And it's very much like an official handbook to the Marvel Universe book. It's great. And actually, I'm not really prepped to talk about it, so I don't have any of the details in front of me, but I'm about a little way into it. And the author, whoever compiled this book, it looks like the artwork is Yikli Kickley, who I know we're friends with on social media, and everyone loves his stuff. He looks like he did a lot of the illustrations in it. I couldn't find any accreditation for that, and I haven't reached out to confirm that. But whoever the author was did a wonderful job in summarizing the character bios. I'm through Snake Eyes right now. Incorporating the main stories of not just the comic book version, but also the cartoon, and then of the post Sunbow cartoon stuff, right? So, for example, Shipwreck, they kind of deal more with his comic book origins, but then they talk about he went on one mission where he met Mara and he fell in love with her, and Flint, they very much adhere to his comic book origin, but then they talk about one notable time he was on leave and he went to stay with his cousin in California, and everyone was being mind wiped by Cobra. Like, he took the best of the cartoon and melded it with he melds it with the comic book continuity. Really, really well done. I was surprised at that. I really wasn't expecting that and expecting to enjoy it that much. Like, I think maybe I was ready for like kind of a meta, in the comic book universe, this happened. And then the cartoon, no, he just does it. Whoever did it. And again, it's Passar. It's not in front of me. Maybe we'll do a deeper dive on it. I don't know, in a further episode, but it's really enjoyable. So the reason I bring that up, let's get back on point here. That book also has a name that I need to find out. Someone who owned it previously had a business card in there, and they left it. It was like a placeholder business card. So I'm here to say Mike Fonseca. Mike Fonseca. If you're out there from Mechanicsville, Virginia, I got your G.I. Joe book. I think that was the one. Maybe this fell out of one of the paperback novels. My brain's getting all confused now. I got all three of them this week. But either way, Mike Fonseca, if you're out there listening, let me know. I just think it's a funny small world because we're doing this podcasting, and I'm like, someone listening must know Mike Fonseca, who's a big G.I. Joe fan and was reading G.I. Joe books about 10 years ago. So Mike Fonseca from Mechanicsville, Virginia. And also, what if Mike Fonseca was Riley Rose and he used the handbook G.I. Joe to do the research for his adult parody for the novelization? We could kill two birds with one stone, everybody. Two birds, one stone.
You were saying?
That's right. I was saying, stalker. And what I was saying is we like to look at books that were on the shelves the same months that G.I. Joe was also on the shelves. In this case, 79. And it's got a takeoff sale date of early November. So we're talking November of 1988. And we're going to start over at DC Comic Books. First big book that I see is Batman the Cult #4 by Bernie Wrightson. It was Jim Starlin too, I believe, wrote it. Two huge names, Wrightson gone too soon. And the Cult is just such a great series. And this is the 4th issue. It wraps up the whole thing. Really, really, really solid stuff. So again, we covered that in an earlier episode. If you've never read Batman the Cult, get it. But the final issue would have been on sale the same week that, or same month rather, that Buzzer was throwing down on Junkyard. Deadshot #1. This is a mini series from DC Comics. And this is the covers that have like the 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the covers. It's like a count up. John Ostrander wrote it. I am a big fan of John Ostrander's Suicide Squad and his characterization of Deadshot, making him, it's hard to say suicidal because he could always just, if he was truly suicidal, he could just take care of it. It's more of like he says a death wish, but he needs it he can't be by his own hand. And this miniseries really, really cemented that. Also, according to the website, and I don't have this comic. I'd love to get my hands on it though. I think I've heard of it, but I've never really seen it because this cover doesn't look familiar at all. But it's the Daily Planet Invasion Special, Volume 1, because the Invasion crossover was about to happen at DC, and it's got one of the Newsstand Legion kids from Kirby's Newsstand Legion carrying a copy of the Daily Planet that says, Earth to Invaders, Drop Dead, which is a reference to Superman Part 2, the Superman the movie 2, of, Earth to, I think it's at Earth to Invaders, right? Yeah, and Drop Dead, where they told did it say Superman to Invaders? I thought it said Earth to Invaders. Yeah, when they told Zod and Ursa and Na to drop dead. It's great. That's a great reference on this book, and I want to get my hands on this. I just found this now, so I haven't really looked. It's probably on eBay for like $1.50. Anyone could get a copy of, but if you have one, that's awesome. I really should look into that. Flash 18. Now this cover has always stood out to me. It's very different from Flash covers at the time, and I think we're going to find out why, because I think that's Kubert. It's a cover by Andy Kubert. Yeah, this is when the Kubert sons, Andy and Adam, were very much drawing like their old man. So it's got this Joe Kubert war feel to it, and the logo itself is different. It's I have no idea how to describe it, but it's like a white block lettering with red interior letters, and that's just very different from the Flash logo at the time. With this Kubert style gritty war feel. Flash is holding a little girl and there's a helicopter shooting at him, like in front of a gravestone that says R.I.P. So it's a really dynamite cover, and they use it's like a turquoise background, which was just not a color that was being used very frequently in comic books at the time. Like usually it's more standard blue, not this teal turquoise blue. I've always enjoyed that cover for some reason. A combination of the logo and the blue really, and then Kubert really stood out for me. It's great. Really great. What else do we have here? Mike Mignola is back, helping out John Byrne on Superman 23, going up against the Irish Silver Banshee. V for Vendetta number 3 is on the stands. And here we go. Who's Who and the Legion wraps up with number 7. Again, and Legion of Superheroes, I've talked about this quite a bit. It's one of my favorite of all time books, period. And if there's any a cast of characters that requires its own, encyclopedia, it's the Legion, between the actual members and all the guests who all had these fleshed out histories. And I just got the Who's Who omnibus, the DC it does not include the Legion one. So I'm wondering, and it says volume 1, but then when I look on the back, is the new printing and new edition one. It says on the back that it's pretty much got all the updates 87 and 88. So I have absolutely no idea if this is just volume 1, what they plan to do with volume 2, because they kind of didn't do that many more Who's Who after the Legion. So maybe volume 2 will have the Legion and some other stuff. But either way, this Who's Who edition is nice if you're old school DC head like myself. And that's it for DC Comics.
You were saying?
Now, Marvel Universe. Well. Destro looking strong on the cover of Action Force Monthly, getting called out by someone, being called guilty. Oh, no, actually, who's calling? So wait, he's saying guilty, but people are pointing fingers. Oh, they're saying, how do you plead? And Destro says he pleads guilty on the cover of Action Force number 6. Again, I'm so close to finishing my Action Force collection. Very, very, very close. Good cover for Amazing Spider-Man 308. It's Todd McFarlane and Spider-Man in a graveyard, and he's holding like the beaten body of the Taskmaster. Heads up, Taskmaster incoming in the new Black Widow movie. That's very exciting. Check your back issue prices for his first appearance. That should skyrocket. It already had skyrocketed. It should continue. John Walker continues as Captain America, this time seeking vengeance against the people that killed. I can't remember if they killed his family and or Battlestar. I should go back and reread those. They were so good. It's just been a very long time since I read them. Daredevil 260. It's Mary. What's her name? Typhoid Mary, with John Romita Jr. Man, I love John Romita Jr. stuff. Doctor Strange got his new series in Sorcerer Supreme. The Kevin Nolan cover is just absolutely gorgeous. It's Dormammu choking the life out of Stephen Strange. Fantastic Four 320. This era of FF, I think, rarely falls in people's favorite era. But I gotta say, man, Ron Frenz drawn the FF, the Keith Pollard art, Englehart writing it, and you have Sinnott inking it. Maybe that's what it was, but there was just something so old school and great about it that really strikes a chord with me. And I don't think anyone throws this, roughly 30 issues on their post Byrne, pre Simonson era on their favorite FF runs, but it's just different. They were doing different stuff. The Thing was all crazy. Reed and Sue were gone. They introduced at the time Ms. Marvel, the She Thing. They're just really, really good stuff, and it just looked different. It looked updatedly old. Does that mean, it looked like classic, but updated for semi-modern times, which I think is where the FF kind of works best, where it kind of keeps a foot in that classic stuff, which if you saw that Marvel teaser this week, they put out they put out a video. You guys can Google it. It was all over about like the Marvel movies and welcome back to the movies. And it was fun. And it was a recap of their 10 years. And then it had little snippets of all the upcoming movies, and it gave the release dates of everything. And it ended with the big four. And I hope that they really keep some aspect of that classic corniness and don't try to not embrace what the FF at its heart is, because it really is not mired, because that would be implied, but it's just rooted. It's rooted's the right word. It's rooted in that 60s aesthetic. So I'd love to see them incorporate that somehow into the movie. Saga of the Submariner #1. This is one of those books that always is, do you file it under Saga, or do you file it under Submariner, or do you file it under Namor with the Namor series? I don't know. I think I've moved it in my collection probably every time I've rearranged, I've moved it. Spectacular Spider-Man Annual #8 is important because it is the first reappearance of the Gwen Stacy clone, who died back in, Amazing 150, I believe. It's the one when Peter thinks which later would spawn the Clone Saga. And, you were the clone, then you died under the rubble, and there was the real Peter. Was it not the real Peter? Blah, blah, blah. That Gwen Stacy clone came back in this one as part of the Evolutionary War. And I remember this being a big deal at the time. There's a whole lot of people up in arms about the Gwen Stacy clone. X-Men 237, Wolverine and Rogue, and they're on their way to Genosha. I'm not sure. I think it's Genosha for the first time. This is the introduction of Genosha, which would go to play a huge role in the comics over the years, on and off, but never really like taking root, I think, in fandom. Always just being this place that they would occasionally destroy and then occasionally rebuild, and then Magneto would take it over. And, we're like the mutant haven, but at first here it's the stand-in for apartheid, where mutants are the legally suppressed minority in this, in this country. And the X-Men were just learning about it, so they have to slip in and find out. But it's a really great concept, and it absolutely has evolved over the years, but it never really took off to where, like, man, that one great Genosha storyline, like, no, it never really nailed, because it literally would get destroyed. And then we rebuilt it, but it's still terrible for mutants. And I was like, if you destroyed it, well, why would you just rebuild it to be terrible again for the same people? It just didn't make any sense to me. And what else do we got? Oh, this is a huge one. Wolverine #1. Now, this is Wolverine Volume 2 #1. It's his first ongoing. Of course, the first Wolverine #1 is the Frank Miller Chris Claremont miniseries. This is the Chris Claremont John Buscema Wolverine, with him standing on top of a pile of bodies, which was everything to the 13-year-old me. That was like, they're showing that this dude has a body count and he don't care. This also introduced Patch to the world. Patch, the cleverly disguised Wolverine. Now, of course, the concept of Wolverine throwing a patch over his eye and no one recognizing him is stupid, but it's their take and their comedic riff on Clark Kent and his glasses. And I'm here for it. I love it. I think it's fabulous. Because he's also typically dressed really nice, like in a tuxedo and everything, right? So it's as if the denizens of Madripoor, and there's also his introduction of Madripoor, which was recently used in Falcon and Winter Soldier, but it's almost as if the people in the Marvel Universe think that the real Wolverine, Logan, is such a rube and such a lowlife and just such a dirtbag that there's no way he would wear a tuxedo. This can't be Wolverine. Of course he'd heal. His eyes could heal, and he would never be fully showered and in a tuxedo. This has to be Patch. It can't be Wolverine. I love that concept, and they never really state it, but that's basically what's implied, and I absolutely love it. Of course, the best example is that cover in a few months when he's leaning up against the Hulk, but we'll get there. Oh, and one more thing before we go, we'll wrap up this segment. X Factor 34, Walter Simonson continues with his Archangel / Death adventure where he's fighting Cameron Hodge. Reason I bring this up is in your local comic shops this week, your LCSs, check out X-Men Legends #3. This is a book that may be off your radar. I think it's off a lot of people's radar, which is a shame. The first 2 issues were by Fabian Nicieza and Brett Booth, and they're telling the storylines that these creators never got to finish in the 80s and the 90s. So they just did a 2-part story about who the real Third Summers brother was and what his deal originally was supposed to be. We're talking about that Adam X character. And now the reason I bring this up is the Simonsons are back and they're on X Factor, and I love it. And I do recall that there was this subplot they started with Ship, their sentient ship, where it was doing things. It was a friend of the team, but it'd start like transforming and doing all the stuff that was out of control and wasn't being controlled by the ship. Like, it was hurting the team, and they were like, I don't know what's happening here. And as a plot, it got dropped. I think they're wrapping that up now, 30 years later, which is great. So if you're a fan of this stuff, if you're a fan of X-Men, don't sleep on this X-Men Legends series. It's really, really good. And, you know, in this case, it's Walter and Louise Simonson. Oh, speaking of that, can't go any further. We lost a legend this week, a very young legend, way too young. John Paul Leon passed away. He was actually worked with Simonson quite a bit. I believe he was a protege of his. Just a stunning talent. I first found his work on Challengers of the Unknown probably 25, 30 years ago during the Superman crossover about the Millennial Giants crossover. And he was doing this Challengers of the Unknown series, and it did like a couple issues crossed over with that. And I picked it up, and I was like, I didn't like this. Wasn't a big Challengers fan, but I was like, this artwork is amazing. And this is, 25 years ago. And then I went and I picked up all the issues of the Channels, and I still don't love that team, but I love that series. And I think it's his artwork. Of course, he's done a ton of stuff since. He did a lot of covers. I'm trying to think. There was a crime book he did. I'm blanking on it, but just a real talent. And he passed and way too soon. So if you're not familiar with his work, guys, Google it. John Paul Leon, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. Leon. His stuff you're going to see it and you're like, oh, I know, I've seen his stuff. It's just dynamite. It's got this foot in like Miller-esque cartoon or comic book dark, but with also this real world look to it. Very, very, very good. So that's a real loss to the comic industry. So we're going to move on to our next segment.
You were saying?
And look at what was in film. Now, we've gone a little long here because there's a whole lot of comic book talk to talk about. But you know what? Actually, I'm going to save this because there's a ton in November. And I'm going to save the movies for next week, which is G.I. Joe 80, because that's late November. Because remember, these books were bi-weekly. So I'm going to save that. So we're going to get on to it.
Now, mass is ready.
It certainly is, Destro. G.I. Joe number 79. Great cover by Ron Wagner, Bob McLeod. It's Buzzer. It's so funny. I did Cold Slither. I wrote, 45 minutes of dialogue for all the Dreadnoks. I dug deep into their histories. I invented storylines for these guys. And do you know, to this day, in order to remember who's who, I have to say Buzzer Blonde, BB. That's Torch is Torch. And between Buzzer and Ripper, I have to look at the character and go Blonde Buzzer. I don't know why that is. I've never been able to keep them straight. Even when I was a kid and I was playing with them all the time, I don't think I kept them straight. I think it's absolutely hilarious. I don't know why. It's like I have another thing. I can't spell the word or pronounce it Wednesday. I don't say it well, and I definitely misspell it every time I try. And the second month of the year, February, I don't do it well. I used to win spelling bees. And these little mental blocks. So if you have mental blocks like that, you're not alone. I always have to go Buzzer Blonde. And before I say it, so if you ever hear hesitation, you know that that's what I'm doing. So Buzzer is attacking Junkyard. Buzzer's on his motorcycle, and he's got his it even has a Biz on it. Like, it even says his name, Biz, and I still have to look at his hair. But it's great. They're coming at the camera. Junkyard's running at the camera, but actually not to camera. He's running like to the side of the camera, which is great because then it's not breaking any fourth walls, which I like. I feel like if that perspective shifted, and if for some reason Junk was actually like pleading at us, the reader, to save him from a chainsaw wielding lunatic, that would be hard to watch. I would not like, like from an animal abuse perspective. So I'm very happy to see that. Of course, two great things about this is not only is so Junkyard is saying ARF, but he's saying it with a question mark because he just doesn't know if he's going to live. And he has a dog tag, and the dog tag says G.I. Joe. I'm assuming the other side it says Junkyard, but on the one side it labels him as a member of the G.I. Joe team because when you're in service, if you're military or police and you're a service animal, you're a dog, you're considered a police officer, you're considered a soldier, you're considered part of the service. So Junkyard certainly falls into that. So if Buzzer attacks Junkyard, he's attacking a member of the Joe team.
Yo, Joe!
Now, the inside of this, you guys get ready for action and adventure because for, let's see, $3.50, you can order a mail-away bazooka. You can order a mail-away William the Refrigerator Perry action figure. You could get yourself a Major Blood. You could get an LCV Recon sled. Or you get yourself a Cobra Hiss. That's great. And you sent it to Hasbro Direct. Just sent the money. They're not even asking for flag points. They're just straight up saying, we made too many of these figures. We have a surplus. Send us not a lot of money. And let's see, shipping and handling is $1.75 only. This is a steal. It's good. The offer is good through December 31st, 1988. You could have cleaned up. I gotta be honest, the price for the figure is not that great, $3.50. But you get yourself a Hiss for $4. Recon sled $5.25. Now I feel like that's because there were a lot of small parts on that. There were a lot of moving parts on that Recon sled. I like that toy. There were a lot of small parts on that. But yeah, that's send that now. I'm assuming if you mailed it in in 1988, based on the fulfillment rate of current Hasbro, you might be getting these right about now. I see everyone online with their Flint and their Lady J figures. I'm like, mother, I ordered mine from Hasbro Direct day one, and I haven't gotten mine yet. Anywho, Dreadnok's Rule is the name of the comic. Script by Larry Hama, pencils by the great Marshall Rogers, Randy Umberlin and inks, Bob Sharon colors, Rick Parker letters, Bobby Chase editor, DeFalco editing in chief. On the New Jersey Turnpike, we've got one of those. It's one of those mundane situations where you put the Joes just in an everyday situation. And in this case, they're driving a heavily armored vehicle on the New Jersey Turnpike, and they're stuck in traffic. Cross Country is driving his Havoc, with their guns are fully on display. And there's a car that's stalled, and the guy gets out of his car, says it's a junker. He says, it would cost more than I paid for this rust bucket to even have it towed. As far as you're concerned, you can have it. And he just gets up and leaves. Now they're stuck in traffic anyway, but this isn't helping anyone.
Yo, Joe!
And on the Havoc, we're talking about Cross Country, Mutt and Junkyard, and Law and Order. So we're getting a lot of dog action going on here. And like pennies from heaven, incoming garbage from heaven. And when they look up, they see that there's a giant helicopter overhead, and the people on the helicopter are tossing a bunch of garbage. And the garbage, of course, is donuts and grape soda, which, of course, in this case, Law says there's something mighty familiar about these. Junkyard, by the way, is, I think, going a little nutty for that grape soda. And Cross Country has had it, and he drives right over that dude's junker car and just smashes it. Now, he smashes it to then go off-road. I feel like he didn't have to smash it to go off-road, but it's great. It's a great move. I'm happy for it. He says it was standing in the way of progress. And then they just drive off because they're headed towards the swamps of Jersey. And we know who hangs out in the swamps of Jersey.
Yo, Joe!
Ripper and Torch and the rest of the Dreadnoks. They're cleaning out their cargo bay, and they're throwing all the garbage out, which is, of course, grape soda and chocolate donuts. Zanzibar is back here on his sled. We've got a Cobra Ferret ATV that's strapped in the back. The Thunder Machine is all strapped down. So this seems to take place. I mean, it definitely takes place post Cobra Island, but they kind of don't mention Cobra Island, but they talk about Zartan having increased responsibility within Cobra, which of course is a result of Cobra Island. I think it's very smart because the rules, especially Marvel at the time, was you got to write every comic book as if it's someone else's new, a first time comic book for them. So there's no real need to reference that Zartan was a part of he killed Serpentor. So he was a part of the winning team on Cobra Island, and therefore he moved up in the ranks. You just get right to, we're all coming up in the Cobra hierarchy. Zartan's in charge of the Cobra consulate. Xandar and I are running the new real estate scam. So you just get to it, and this is Arana, by the way, talking to Zartan, and Xandar's also in the cockpit with him. So there's no real need to kind of rehash why or hows, but it is implied that because of their success in Cobra Island, Zartan's moved up in the ranks of Cobra. And actually, there's a line later in this that tells me this is the moment when the Dreadnok stopped being just random dudes that were being hired and actually became part of Cobra.
Yo, Joe!
So their helicopter is now landing at the Cobra consulate. Remember, it's that big, building right in downtown New York. There's a bunch of Vipers and Televipers. They're all lined up at attention as the helicopter cracks open. Out drives out it's that Dreadnok ATV. That's what it is too. That 3-wheeler, the trike. They all come cruising out. Now I'm assuming they're on the rooftops. I don't know how far they're driving, but they all drive their vehicles out, and they almost run over all these Vipers. That's the one fun thing that's just great about the Dreadnoks. They are cartoon characters. They're everywhere they go, they just cause havoc with seemingly no consequences. And the more you do that, the more I love it. And I think that it works so well.
Yo, Joe!
While they're up there, randomly, one of the Televipers finds a something in the circuit tester on the main commo link to the satellite dish. It's sure not part of the original issue. In fact, it's a bugging device. And it basically says G.I. Joe's been bugging the consulate this whole time. And so now that Zartan's in charge of it, he's not happy about this stuff. So he's going to figure out how many of their operations have been compromised from it, blah, blah, blah. And he's being told that basically Zartan's in charge. And when you're in charge, what is it? Heavy hangs the head. Like, more money, more problems. That's what Zartan's going to encounter here.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, once they destroy that breaker, it looks like they're kind of in the tunnels nearby. Who is it? Dial Tone, Mainframe, and CoverGirl are hanging out in the sewer. they're hanging out in the sewers, and they have absolutely been spying on Cobra. So they say, they're like, all right, pack it up. We're done here. We've been, we got all the information we can, so we can go home now. So they climb out of the sewers. As they come up, Dial Tone runs into one of his old sergeants from Vietnam, actually, because the guy, in the guy's run, it looks like he's drawn to be a blind newsstand operator. He is a newsstand operator. It looks like he's drawn to be blind too, because he talks about his medical discharge, and he says that ruckus and Bon Me Thwat, or Thwat, not sure how that's pronounced. I apologize. And Dial Tone says, yeah, you'll always be Sarge to us. Thanks for the cover. So they were using like the sewer grate underneath his newsstand to kind of spy on Cobra. So if you look at this newsstand, it's great. There's a lot of magazine humor in this comic. There's a used cars magazine. There's Aqueduct Facts, which I'm actually assuming to be about the aqueduct. There was a horse racing place in New York, because I think I only know that because of Die Hard 3. They talk about the aqueduct. And then there's like, is it High Horses? What's that say? Inside Horses, and then racing. So it's a bunch of racing forums, right? And then there's a nice stack of comic books. And it's all the books at the time. So of course you've got your G.I. Joe, you got your Special Missions, you got your X-Men, your Thor, your Spider-Man, you've got your Daredevil, you've got your New Universe Justice, Incredible Hulk, and Marshall Rogers, God bless him, also included Air Raiders and Visionaries, which was absolutely great. Absolutely fantastic. So about this page, which I love, they are just choosing to sit in water, just sit in waist high water for no real reason other than that's the only way they could do it. So they got a propped up table. They're sitting in water the whole time. And you see very subtly, this is nice. Marshall Rogers drew this. As they climb up, you see the cover girl is pulling off, what are those called? Slickers or overalls? You know, like waders. That's what they're called. Like fishing waders. They're all wearing these fishing waders so that they're not just sitting in water. This is great. This is really subtle. Very nice. By the way, again, you know, I love Marshall Rogers as a penciler. I think his rendition of all these figures, there is something about the cleanness of, I think it's the cleanness of his line and the weight of his line that really makes them feel like the action figures come to life, but still are action figures. He draws them very much to model, absolutely to model. And there's not so much hatching and depth of shadow on each character that they really genuinely look like pieces of plastic kind of posed and, you know, and moving about their days. I wonder if you guys agree with me on that. And I'm trying to phrase that in the most complimentary way possible, because I really do mean that as a huge compliment. This is a toy line, and it's like he's such a great draftsman. It's like he's must have been looking at the toys and just drawing the toys. And it shows, and I love it. It's great.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, in the Jersey marshes, the Havoc is barely disguised, but it is. And they are spying on the gas station. This is the New Jersey gas station, which is where they were heading before they got thrown garbage on them, right? So that those two crossing paths was just kind of random. But they're there to do covert surveillance on the gas station. And Mutt says, you know, we might be sitting out here for months talking to Junkyard, so you better get used to keeping quiet because Junkyard's barking a little bit. And they're just watching this old gas station. Now, remember, it's not just a gas station. When we saw it last time, it's obviously it's Zartan's headquarters, but it's also camouflage. Remember, it's all really high tech and everything. They never really do that in this issue. It always just stays this junky gas station. But remember, it was also camouflage like Zartan and this stuff. And this is where I'm talking about more magazine comedy. Not really comedy, I guess, but just more magazine gags. Cross Country is reading Preventive Maintenance Monthly. Not really a gag, but the fact that there's just more magazines drawn on the page. I think that's funny. I don't know why that's funny. It just is. And Law and Order, Law is telling jokes, which is great. Hey, that reminds me, why can't you bury a Dreadnok at sea? Well, I give up, Law. Because he would leave a ring around the ocean. Bum.
Yo, Joe!
Man, now listen up, kids. Do I got a deal for you? I've got 12 hot caliente hits for a cool penny. I know what you're thinking. How can that be possible? With a little thing called Columbia House, right? So I'm going to send you 12 cassettes or records, right? For just 1 penny. Or listen, that's cassettes or records. If you want to get highfalutin and you want to get CDs, you know, I get it. It's 1988. CDs are on their way to becoming a thing, but they're not there yet. I'll give you 6 CDs for $1. So you can either take my cassettes with moving parts and old vinyl records for a penny, or you can get CDs, which are pressed and just pieces of lump plastic for 100 times that markup for $1. You could choose from things such as Aerosmith's Permanent Vacation, Bruce Springsteen's Tunnel of Love, In Excess Kick, Terrence Trent D'Arby introducing The Hardline, Michael Jackson's Bad. What about David Lee Roth's Skyscraper? Or for you George Michael fans, Faith, the title cut, Faith, Father Figure, One More Try, etc. We've got The Bangles, Different Light, Whitney Houston's Whitney, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. How about classics of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, such as Led Zeppelin 4, The Byrds' Greatest Hits, Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced, Aretha Franklin's 30 Greatest Hits. Yes, Fragile. How about some Steely Dan, Aja? Or, if you're into Jim Croce, Photographs and Memories, The Greatest Hits. This can all be yours. Just write back to Columbia House and Record and Tape Club, 1400 North Fruit Ridge, P.O. Box 1130, Terre Haute, Indiana. Man, those were the days. Whoa, there's a whole nother page of it. 3 pages of Columbia House ads, guys. Get yourself some Daryl Hall and John Oates. Ooh, yeah. What about Sade? Stronger Than Pride. Oh, come on. Here we go. Metallica, Kill 'Em All. I'm there for it. Billy Idol, Vital Idol. Guys, don't pass up on this. And if I may recommend, go for the CDs. They'll never go out of style. Meanwhile, in another part of New Jersey, the Dreadnoks are taking the Zartan siblings, Zorana and Xandar, to this real estate seminar. So Zorana kind of teased it that they're in charge of this new scheme. And they're in disguise, I guess. They're wearing like suits clothes, but they've still got the pink hair and the facial tattoos, and they haven't really disguised themselves, but they are dressed nicely. And they're going to present at the All Tucked In motel, free introductory seminar, how to become filthy rich from real estate without having any capital or even moderate intelligence. 8 p.m. tonight in the Imperial Conference Room. This is what caused the crash of 2008, everybody. We can trace all that back to G.I. Joe number 79. What Cobra is up to here is absolutely what caused The Big Short in 2008. And the Dreadnoks themselves, they're like, let's get out of here, stop at a convenience store, and let's go hang out at Zartan's old gas station.
Yo, Joe!
Now, a little more traffic action as the the Dreadnoks are on their way. They see that there's just a random military convoy driving down the highway, just, not Joe related, totally random. And of course, it's now a running gag in this that Larry always has the Dreadnoks attack these military vehicles on the road ever since their early appearances. So of course they're going to do that. And Monkey Wrench, as usual, very much in character. Monkey Wrench is very often like the the spirit of rationality or the voice of reason. That's what it is. Monkey Wrench is usually very often the voice of reason in things like this. And he's like, "Are you sure? Okay." And so then they cross the median for some action.
Yo, Joe!
And sure enough, they attack these. They call them deuce and a halves, which are 2.5 ton trucks. They're buzzers ripping up their tires. They're shooting at them, torches lighting them on fire, and they're full of what does he call them? He calls them ever readies and no goods, enlisted reserves and National Guards. That's what Torch is using, like U.S. military slang against them, which is kind of funny. But I love that they use it. And they just no. And for the record, these National Guard guys, they're loaded. They're driving around U.S. highways with loaded M16s, and they start shooting back at the Dreadnoks.
Yo, Joe!
And may I say, the nighttime artwork on this by Marshall is really great. They're making a lot of use of Zipatone. I'm a fan all day of Zipatone. There's a panel on that previous page. There was a panel. It's a little kind of semi-triangular panel of overhead shot of the highway, and the zip on the highway is perfect. And the headlights are where the zip was cut out of it, and then there's no zip there, and it's painted yellow or colored yellow. Really, really great stuff. So, and there's a lot of zip on all these pages. I'm a fan of old school Zipatone, and because when used well, it's really smart. And they certainly do a great job. Now, as they're doing this, Monkey Wrench, there's a crate of something. We don't know what it is, but Monkey Wrench steals it off the back of one of these trucks. And then they peel off into the Jersey desert, or Jersey marshes, not desert, but to the marshes of Jersey on the way to Zartan's thing. So the soldier guy calls it in. Basically, we're just arming up the Dreadnoks for later.
Yo, Joe!
And at the stakeout, Law and Order, they pick up on the radio that it sounds like the Dreadnoks had a convoy nearby, so that they're thinking, Cross Country says they better go after them. But Mutt points out their orders are stay in reserve, which kind of makes sense because you would think, they must be heading. We know this is their hideout, so they're probably going to head back here. And sure enough, their headlights are coming. Lot of dog characterization in this issue, starting from the cover. This issue is like Junkyard's spotlight issue because he's got a little woof. He's the first one to notice that there's noise coming. Order, by the way, not as interested. I feel like Order's just a drug sniffing dog, and Junkyard is more of like I'm gonna get the bad guys kind of a dog. I feel like it.
Yo, Joe!
So as they pull up, some more great zip work on the building, cut out where the headlights are, flying up against it. And this is where, like, they don't, this would have been a cool spot to do that, the camouflage thing, you know, where like they pull up and then someone flips it on or off or something like that. But they seem to be treating it straight. Like, this is the building, and, you know, it's just like old times kind of thing. Thrasher, of course, is an idiot, and he starts eating the box of donuts. And this is where they become cartoon characters. Zanzibar just chugging the grape soda. Ripper also in the grape soda. And they ask what was in that box you grabbed. And we can see here that it was was it man, my eyes are terrible, young listeners. M47 MAV-J Dragon. It's basically it's a wire guided missile that we're going to see later. They call it there. It's hands on a wire guided anti-tank missile. And the good grief, those brain dead apes got their hands on a wire guided anti-tank missile. They didn't even realize it yet either. And the guys are looking at them through a binocular.
Yo, Joe!
So they're trying to inch a little closer. Mutt and Junkyard are low crawling through the brush. Meanwhile, Buzzer and Thrasher get into a fight, and people just beat on Thrasher, and I feel like it's warranted, and I'm here for it. Between the broken nose and now he's just getting punched in the face, and Thrasher is doing a weird thing where it's like he smells that Junkyard's around, because he starts behaving like a dog, and Buzzer says Thrasher smells something out there, something not friendly to Dreadnoks, and he rides out on his Harley with his buzzsaw, his chainsaw, raring and ready to go.
Yo, Joe!
And he sees that it's a dog. Now, what Junkyard's doing is Junkyard knows that Buzzer's heading right towards his master, Mutt, and he runs away to lead him away from the rest of the Joe team. So Junkyard is a massive, massive hero here. And we get storytelling wise, we get a really nice shot. And that's why it's important. Because in the show don't tell world, you see, first it's like a medium shot. You see Buzzer heading towards Mutt. Mutt's head is in the grass. You can see his head. And you see Junkyard jumping out of the grass and kind of going at a 90-degree angle, right? And Buzzer is heading absolutely directly at Mutt. Then the camera goes high, and it gives us a nice aerial view of the entire scene. And this is great storytelling, because this tells us, without saying to us, and it's reinforced in the next panel, which is important, but it shows us that what Junkyard did is he diverted Buzzer's path off, 90 degrees that way to the right side of the screen, because had Buzzer keep going, not only would have seen Mutt, he would have seen, the beyond them was the Havoc and, in cross country and all those guys. So it shows us immediately what Junkyard was doing. It's fantastic. And then you get a close up of Mutt's eyes, and he reinforced it that Junkyard showed himself to lead the Dreadnok away. And we get this really hard to watch panel of Buzzer raking his active chainsaw against the side of Junkyard. Like, that can't be good. That is a tough panel.
Yo, Joe!
And the Dreadnoks, loathsome rascals that they are, they're mostly cheering it, though. Thrasher says he shouldn't have done that poor pooch, which is great. And Thrasher's got a soft spot for dumb animals, and Zanzibar's like, oh, it's because he identifies with him. But you know what, Thrasher, you're not wrong, dude. And that's when Mutt jumps up and calls them murderers, and he starts shooting, guns blazing. So now they realize the dog wasn't, they didn't know it was the G.I. Joe team at all. But now they realize he's not alone, and they're getting shot at. So they bust in and they start grabbing some weapons.
Yo, Joe!
And here comes Cross Country on his Havoc. Of course, Cross Country in the least defended spot on any G.I. Joe vehicle. Up top and with no armor in front of you. That still was a great toy, though. I'm here to say it, man. That toy was awesome. I never put him in that seat, though. I don't think. No, maybe. No. My Cross Country was never sat in that seat. My country always I pretended the driver was in the canopy, and that seat was just for the gunner. because I was like, cross country would be so stupid. It's to just sit in that seat and get shot all the time. But he's heading that way. He sends Law and Order to cover his flank. The Thunder Machine comes roaring out. Thunder Machine's just a great. I mean, it's straight out of the Mad Max mold, obviously, which all those vehicles are fantastic. But it just really strikes the heart of like every '80s kid. It's got everything you want. It's a Trans Am. It's got giant machine guns. It's got like, it looks like it was cobbled together by the A-Team itself. It's got a jet engine. Everything about the Thunder Machine is great.
Yo, Joe!
And now Buzzer, it picks up that, they look in that crate and they get that wire-guided missile. And so he's going to head out and he's going to use that missile against Cross Country and the Havoc. And it says, and actually that's when Cross Country recognizes him. He says, "It's the Thunder Machine. Thrasher got away from me once. I won't let him get away again." This is way back in G.I. Joe number 57. And Buzzer launches this wire-guided missile. So all, quote, "All I got to do is keep the target centered in the sight reticule and the missile will stay on course." And
Yo, Joe!
that's when Order pops up from that flanking position he was sent to. And he attacks Buzzer, and he gets the canine revenge that we all needed from two pages ago. And he just goes to town with the big fangs, working it on Buzzer. Just great. Really gets revenge for what Buzzer did to Junkyard. And the missile misses its mark, obviously. And the two vehicles themselves that were going at each other, they played a little game of chicken.
Yo, Joe!
And so now they're kind of circling in like a kind of a figure eight motion kind of a thing to get their guns to traverse so that they can, because they both have forward mounted guns. If you remember that they don't. Although there are side guns that would swivel, but there's no one else on the Cross Country on the Havoc with Cross Country, so there's no one really to shoot from the side. So they have to kind of get in front. And while they're doing this, they're trying to run really, really, really tight circles. And as this happens, we're getting a lot of crazy side effects as the cars themselves are almost tipping.
Yo, Joe!
And Cross Country manages to kind of do a spin out, which is great. Puts on the brakes, throws one of his tracks in reverse, slings them around 180, and he gets his guns directly for a perfect flank shot, and it absolutely destroys the Thunder Machine. This is like Thunder Machine 3.0 though. I feel like it's been destroyed a couple times. And then he runs over it. What did we see earlier when he ran over that car? That was a setup for what he's doing here, showing you that the Havoc's pretty tough and it's going to crush cars, and it's doing the exact same thing to the Thunder Machine.
Yo, Joe!
So now, again, this wraps up pretty quick. The Dreadnoks, they hightail it. They all jump on their ATVs and Zanzibar's ship, and they all fly away. It looks like they've captured probably Thrasher and Monkey Wrench and Buzzer, right? From what I can see. It's all very heavily in shadow, and it's good that it's heavily in shadow because here comes Law, and he's carrying Junkyard. He says, "Mutt, I found Junkyard. He's hurt real bad, but if we get him to a vet, he's going to make it." Junkyard, Mutt says he's alive. Wow, I'm so filled with happiness. I could almost forgive this walking mucus ball for taking a chainsaw to the poor puppy, but on second thought, and he proceeds to kick Buzzer in the face. And we get one last ARF with a question mark from Junkyard, and that's how the book ends. I like the shadow work at the end here because you don't want bright, clean pictures of a dog that's been chainsawed. So that's really smart, and it's smart to apply it to the whole page from an artistic perspective. So it's not that jarring. It's not like we're just hiding this one panel. It's saying, okay, everyone's living in shadow. We then don't have to show you what a chainsaw Junkyard would look like. So that's great. There's no no letters page on here. We got an advertisement for Semper Fi, which was the story of America and the family that helped forge it. We've also got ads for Marvel subscriptions, some Chips Ahoy ad with some word puzzles in the back. And finally on the back, this is an ad that I saw forever for Buck Rogers' Battle in the 25th Century board game. I never played this, but I've seen this cover, or like this ad, a million times. There's like a jillion pieces on here. There's all kinds of warships. This looks like the kind of game that would be hugely popular today, and it came up 30 years. Did anyone here play this Battle for the 25th Century game? This game looks great. It's got all these planets and warships and Ming the Merciless and all kinds. No, that's Buck Rogers. That's not me. Buck Rogers is Twicky and Dr. Theopolis. I'm here for it. All right, guys. Well, that's it for G.I. Joe 79. Man, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Remember, Riley Rose, if you're out there. Mike Fonseca, if you're out there. Ring me up. And I appreciate everyone listening. And I hope you guys are doing well. And now you're Joe. And Joeing is half the battle.